Hello, I am Vandinika Shukla, and I was a young leader, EDD young leader last year on education. And this is Dareen Abulail from Networks of Mediterranean Youth. She's a youth coordinator in Jordan. And we're returning from a very engaging and powerful and dynamic brainstorming session that was organized entirely by young leaders. That was moderating, and we had Dareen as a speaker. It was on transforming mindsets and how can we reshape education systems and leverage social media to transform mindsets of young people so that we can be ready to take on the challenge of the SDGs. So to begin with, Dareen, can you tell us a little bit more about NetMed Youth and how are you mobilizing young people in the region?
Thank you. NetMed Youth is a regional project that is in 8 countries around on the Mediterranean, and Jordan is one of them. It's an intersectoral approach implemented by UNESCO and funded by the EU. When I say intersectoral approach, this is the cool thing about the NetMed Youth, is that 3 sectors of UNESCO coming together to perform as one body to deliver on youth policies in the region. The overall, these 3 sectors are the policy sector, social human sciences, and the communication information, and which is the media one, and the education as well. The overall goal of the NetMed Youth Project is to provide an enabling environment for young people to be able to be part of the decision-making processes related to their priorities, related to their strategies, to the policies that are affecting their lives, and to as well gather the relevant stakeholders who can support young people to be the positive, this positive change, and to support them to be engaged, such as media and media professionals and journalists as well. What basically relates to the session that we were in, that you just mentioned now, is NetMed Youth is providing this space for young people where these values could be taught and could be reflected upon among young people and youth organizations as well. In order for us to be able to implement the Sustainable Development Goals, to be part of the Sustainable Development Goals, it is quite important that we provide these spaces for young people to be able to reflect, to be able to take decisions, and to prepare themselves to talk to the decision makers and to lobby with other activists and with civil society organizations to get their messages across. NetMed Youth, as well, as I said, we work with the media, which is media professionals and journalists has been with us from the very beginning, because NetMed Youth believes that if a real advocacy to happen, if real change to happen, media needs to be on board. So they supported young people with several capacity building programs. They supported the project and such to advocate for young people priorities and to do the necessary measures to spot the representation of young people in the media, to help us out identify where young people are presented, where they're not presented, and how we can enhance this kind of cooperation. I would sum up about just one more final thing about the NetMed Youth is that we're mandated to work with civil society organizations. The great thing about NetMed Youth, that I found it great personally, is that we work on an assets-based approach, in the meaning that we work on developing this culture of networking among youth organizations and civil society organizations, where we work on the assets of these organizations. We do not try to impose a certain agenda or certain program, but what we do is that we look at the assets of these organizations, we look at the needs of the country related to youth, and then we find the perfect formula where we can all work together and we all could be a part of the change.
And coming back from this brainstorming session on transforming mindsets, what would be your one message on what do we need to do with our current education systems and curriculums in order to equip the youth with 21st century skills and the ability to think creatively and innovatively and be critical of the social norms and structures that are shared with them in a regular education system as such?
Inspired by the session that we were in, I think, and hearing for the young people that were in the room as well, and from our work within the NetMed Youth, it is quite important to keep supporting these spaces, the safe spaces for young people to learn. This is the first thing that we always need to have in mind, is that these spaces are important I know that there is a lot of discussions on if these spaces actually works or not. These spaces works because the young people, around 40 young people who were in the room, are products of these spaces. So if they can come here and they state their mind, and I'm quite sure that there are thousands other young people who can use these spaces. Other things that we need to keep the support for trainers and for teachers and coaches with the new methodologies of teaching and learning that is youth friendly and that kind of maintain this human relationship and human based relationship between the students and young people and the teacher. And as well, I think it's about time that I know for creative tools for learning, it's available. We talked about that in the session. It's becoming more and more accessible and available for young people. But then quality of education is what we need to think of. The quality of the message that is being transferred for the young people, this is what we need to focus on as well. And this is what the Sustainable Development Goals are about as well, is that we make sure that the messages that goes out for young people, by young people, is a positive message that influences self-learning and self-development along with the social responsibility around them. So this is for NetMed Youth, but I'm interested because you work with young leaders as well. How do you feel that you, as a young person working for or volunteering with young leaders, could do to implement these Sustainable Development Goals?
Well, on behalf of the EDD Young Leaders, I think we need to do three things as young people with this space and agency to make change happen, which is that, first of all, I think we need to talk within ourselves as well. There's so many young leader communities across the world in many different regions through different institutions. And I think there needs to be cohesive and collaborative action between young leaders so that we have collective action towards the common goals of the SDGs. And I think partnerships as the SDG itself is also partnerships for the youth. And like we heard in our session, I think youth is not just one SDG, it's all of the SDGs. And I think we need to embrace that a lot more. And secondly, I think the important thing would be for us to really continue active engagement and not just stop at posting, tweeting, Facebooking, but really entering a dialogue with our leaders, entering a dialogue with each other and our civil society. And lastly, I think that the young leaders need to assume a new kind of leadership. We are in a very different world and a very difficult world often where we need leadership that is for the humanity and leadership that is from the heart, really, and addresses human rights, addresses people's needs, and also is value-based. So I think those three things is what we need and what I hope to do also as a young leader myself and continue engagement.
This is great. So just taking it from the session, I've asked the participants to take the Sustainable Development Goals personal. So what would be your personal commitment as a young person and a young volunteer to implement the Sustainable Development Goals or be part of the discussion of the Sustainable Development Goals?
Well, I would straight away jump to goal number 5 of gender equality, and I think we need to be proactive in how we are mainstreaming that through all our work, but also how we are mainstreaming that in our daily lives, and how we work as young leaders or just citizens of the world in calling out stereotypes, raising our voice, engaging continuously, and leading from within to ask ourselves the question of, are we getting up every morning and so helping create a gender equal world by being critical, being innovative and creative in how we receive information and also how we progress to action. So thank you so much, Dareen, for joining me and joining the session and sharing more about your work at NetMed Youth. And that's a wrap. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.